I realized why my family invited me to dinner after years of silence, and by the time it hit me, it was already too late to walk away. If I had trusted that feeling in my gut the moment I stepped through that door, maybe everything would have been different. But I didn't, and what happened next is something I still can't fully explain without feeling that same cold fear all over again. My name is Elena Carter, and before I tell you what happened that night, take a second to subscribe to the channel and comment your country below. I always read them and I want to know where you're watching from. Now, here's how it started. I hadn't heard from my family in almost 4 years. Not a call, not a message, nothing. Ever since the day I walked out after one of the worst arguments we'd ever had, the kind that leaves words hanging in the air long after they're said, the kind you can't take back even if you wanted to. My mother, Diane, had always been controlling, my older brother Marcus had always taken her side, and my younger sister Lily, well, she learned early on that staying quiet kept her safe. That night, they made it clear I didn't belong anymore, and I believed them. So when I saw my phone light up with my mom's name last week, I actually thought it was a mistake at first, like maybe she dialed me by accident. But then the message came through. Dinner this Friday, 7 p.m. We should talk. No apology, no explanation, just that. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I'd like to admit, because part of me, the stupid, hopeful part, thought maybe this was it. Maybe they finally missed me. Maybe they wanted to fix things. I almost didn't go. I even typed out a message saying I couldn't make it, but I never sent it. Instead, I showed up. And the moment I pulled into the driveway of the house I hadn't seen in years, something felt off. It looked the same on the outside, but there was this strange stillness, like the air itself was holding its breath. The porch light flickered slightly as I walked up, and before I could even knock, the door swung open like they'd been waiting for me. My mother stood there smiling, a soft, almost too perfect smile I didn't recognize. "Elena," she said, like my name hadn't been erased from her life for 4 years, like nothing had ever happened. And before I could respond, she stepped forward and hugged me. She hadn't hugged me in years, not even before I left. It caught me off guard, and for a second I just stood there, frozen, unsure if I should hug her back or pull away. Then I noticed something else. Over her shoulder in the living room, Marcus was standing there, watching us, his expression unreadable, and Lily sat on the couch, twisting her hands nervously, avoiding my eyes completely. "Come in," my mom said, guiding me inside like a guest instead of her daughter, and that's when the feeling in my chest tightened just a little more. The house smelled different. Cleaner than usual, almost like they were trying too hard, and the dining table was already set, candles lit, plates perfectly arranged like this was some kind of special occasion. "You didn't have to do all this," I said quietly, but my voice sounded strange even to me, like I didn't belong in it anymore. "We wanted tonight to be nice," my mom replied, and something about the way she paused before that last word made my stomach twist. Marcus finally stepped forward, giving me a nod instead of a hug, like we were distant acquaintances, and Lily mumbled a soft, "Hi," without looking up. No one mentioned the past. No one apologized. It was like they'd all silently agreed to pretend those 4 years never happened, and somehow that felt worse. We sat down at the table, and for a while, everything seemed normal. Too normal. They asked me about work, about where I was living, about things they had no right to suddenly care about, and I answered carefully, trying to ignore the way they kept exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. At one point, Marcus asked, "So you're still living alone?" And when I nodded, he leaned back in his chair like that answer confirmed something for him. That's when the first real wave of unease hit me. It wasn't just the questions, it was the way they were asking them, like they already knew the answers and were just waiting for me to say them out loud. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was overthinking, that maybe this was just awkwardness after years apart. But then my mom reached for her glass, paused, and looked directly at Marcus before taking a sip. And that silent exchange, that one small moment, made something inside me go cold, because it felt rehearsed, like I had walked into the middle of something already in motion, and I was the only one who didn't know what it was. The moment that look passed between my mom and Marcus, something shifted inside me, like a quiet alarm finally going off, and I started paying attention to everything. The way Marcus kept checking his phone but never actually responding to anything. The way Lily's hands trembled every time someone asked me a question. The way my mom kept smiling just a little too long after I finished speaking, like she was waiting for something else to happen. I tried to stay calm, to act like I didn't notice, but the feeling in my chest kept tightening, and halfway through dinner, I realized this wasn't a reunion, it was something else entirely. "So, Elena," my mom said suddenly, setting her fork down with a soft clink that sounded louder than it should have, "you've been doing well for yourself, haven't you?" The question itself wasn't strange, but the tone was. Too careful, too deliberate. And before I could answer, Marcus leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking onto mine in a way that made my stomach drop. "Yeah, we heard you've been busy." Heard? That word echoed in my head because I hadn't told them anything. Not where I worked, not where I lived, nothing. And I felt a chill run down my spine as I forced a small nod. "I mean, I've been working, yeah," I said cautiously, but my voice felt distant, like I was hearing it from somewhere else. "That's good," my mom replied quickly, almost too quickly, and then she reached under the table for something, her movement subtle but not subtle enough, because I saw Marcus straighten slightly, like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. My heart started pounding, slow and heavy, each beat louder than the last, and suddenly I didn't want to be there anymore. "What's this about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it came out sharper than I intended, cutting through the air and making Lily flinch. For a second, no one answered. The silence stretched just long enough to confirm what I already feared, that this wasn't just dinner. Then my mom placed something on the table in front of me. A folder, plain, unmarked. But the moment I saw it, I knew. I knew this was the reason I'd been invited. "We just thought," she began slowly, folding her hands together like she was choosing every word carefully, "that since you're doing well now, it would be the right time to discuss some things." My eyes didn't leave the folder. "What things?" I asked, my voice quieter now, but somehow heavier. Marcus leaned back in his chair again, crossing his arms, watching me like he was waiting for a reaction he hadn't seen yet. "Just open it," he said. Just open it, like it was nothing, like my entire body was screaming at me not to. For a moment, I didn't move. I could feel it, that same instinct I'd ignored when I first got the message, that same voice telling me something wasn't right. But this time, it was louder, almost desperate. And still, I reached for the folder. My fingers hesitated just before touching it, like even my body didn't want to go through with this. But then I pulled it closer and slowly opened it. The first thing I saw was my name, printed clearly across the top of a document I didn't recognize. My chest tightened instantly. I flipped the page, scanning quickly, trying to make sense of what I was looking at, but the words blurred together for a second before finally settling into something I could understand. And when they did, my breath caught so sharply it almost hurt. "What is this?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out, and when I looked up, all three of them were watching me. My mom, with that same calm, controlled expression, Marcus, with a faint smirk he wasn't even trying to hide anymore, and Lily looked like she wanted to disappear. "It's just paperwork," my mom said gently, but there was nothing gentle about the way her eyes stayed locked on mine. "Something we need you to sign." "Something we need you to sign." The words echoed in my head, louder and louder, until everything else faded into the background, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't about reconnecting, it wasn't about fixing the past, it was about me. They hadn't invited me because they missed me, they invited me because they needed something from me, and whatever it was, they were willing to pretend for an entire night just to get it. I looked back down at the document, my hands slightly shaking now, and started reading more carefully, line by line, each sentence making less sense than the last, until suddenly it did. And when it did, the room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in around me, because what they were asking me to do wasn't just wrong, it was something that could change everything. And judging by the way they were all watching me, they already knew exactly what my answer would be. I sat there, frozen, staring at the document in front of me, my mind racing faster than I could process, because the reality of what my family had planned was finally sinking in, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to stand up and walk out. But I couldn't. Not yet. My name, Elena Carter, was on every page, but that wasn't what terrified me. What terrified me was the clauses, the stipulations, the way every word seemed designed to trap me, control me, and make me look like the fool if I refused. Marcus leaned back, smirking, his eyes gleaming in a way I hadn't seen in years, and I realized that he had orchestrated all of this from the moment I got the dinner invitation. My mother sat there with that calm, collected expression that had once comforted me, but now felt like a mask hiding something far more dangerous. And Lily, my sweet little sister who had always stayed quiet, was twisting her hands nervously in her lap, glancing at the ceiling, hoping she could escape without being part of the confrontation. I took a deep breath and looked at them, my hands still on the document. "You invited me here just for this?" I asked, my voice trembling but loud enough to fill the silence. My mother nodded slightly, keeping her calm facade, and said, "We just wanted to make sure you understood what you were agreeing to." That's when it hit me. The trap had nothing to do with forgiveness, reconciliation, or family. This was about power, control, and seeing if I could be manipulated like I had been so many times before. For a moment, anger bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce. But then I realized something crucial. They had underestimated me. All those years of being ignored, dismissed, and treated like I didn't matter had only made me stronger, sharper, and far more aware of the kind of people I was dealing with. I forced myself to sit straighter, to meet their gazes evenly, and in that instant, I knew the night had changed. I wasn't their scared little sister anymore. I smiled softly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your lips but goes straight to your eyes, and I said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." They froze, confusion flickering across their faces. "You see," I continued, "I know exactly why you invited me. I know exactly what you're hoping I'll do. But here's the thing. You can't control me anymore, and tonight I'm not the same girl you tried to push around for years." Marcus's smirk faltered just slightly, and my mother's expression twitched, but I wasn't done. I leaned forward just a little, keeping my voice calm but cold, and said, "If you think I'll sign this without knowing all the facts, you're wrong. I've spent the last 4 years learning how to protect myself, and you just reminded me why I left in the first place." Lily finally looked up, her eyes wide, and I could see relief washing over her face, like she'd been silently waiting for someone to finally stand up. The rest of the night was a battle of words, subtle power plays, and careful observation. Every comment my mother made, every glance from Marcus, every nervous movement from Lily, it all became ammunition for me. By the time the evening ended, the document remained unsigned, the trap exposed, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of victory. Not because I had humiliated them, not because I had proven anything to the world, but because I had reclaimed my power, my voice, and my place in my own life. I left that house that night with a strange mix of relief and satisfaction, knowing that my family could no longer manipulate me, no longer treat me like I didn't matter, and no longer decide my worth. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone, it's about finally refusing to be hurt. And in that moment, I realized I had achieved it. That's the night I stopped being the scared little sister and became the one in control of her own story. And as I drove home, watching the city lights blur past, I smiled to myself, knowing they would never underestimate me again, and the memory of that dinner, the trap they tried to set, would always remind me just how strong I had become.